And
It's
we are
Thursday.
recording.
Awesome. Thursday night and a Las Vegas Triathlon Club member spotlight. And tonight we've got Dr. Chad Hanson. Hey, Chad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is great. So, Dr. Hanson is new to triathlon, and he's going to tell that story in just a bit. And he's also very involved with the community from a orthopedic surgeon perspective. And I'm going to let Bob do the official introduction, so he doesn't get mad at me for stealing all the material. But I will say,
Stealing all my good material. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
but I will say that
But
it's great talking with Chad ahead of time because he is originally from Texas. So although we never crossed paths in Texas, we were regionally in the same spot. So always good to talk with a Texan. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bob for the official introduction.
thank you, John, and welcome, Dr. Hanson. It was really good for you to do this for us tonight. I know you have a real tight schedule. Just as an introduction for Dr. Hanson, to start with, he did do my shoulder and it did a great job on it, and it's better than new actually. So I really appreciate that. Dr. Hanson did some triathlons a while ago, got a little bit away from him, and then COVID hit, and we'll let him tell that story. Got dusted off his old bikes and got back on them. And most recently, Dr. Hanson won his age group in the Las Vegas Triathlon, and then signed up for Pumpkin Man and won his age group in that one. So, it's like a lot of folks are saying, hey, wait a second, you're new on the scene here. You're not supposed to be winning and standing on top of the podium like that. So just to get started, oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about Dr. Hanson, he's the head team physician for the Raiders, and he's also one of the team physicians for the Golden Knights. So he is very involved in the community, and we were really glad to have him in the Tri Club, that's for sure. So
And
just to get started,
well, yeah, and I was just going to say, if we see him on TV during a game, that's not a good thing because that's one of our players
yeah,
hurt.
that's
So.
so thanks for being here tonight, and tell us, just to get started, what got you into triathlon in the first place? And then secondly, how did you get so good so fast after just coming back from not ever racing for a long time? I mean, to win those two triathlons.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. So 15 years ago, when I was in med school, my wife and I decided to do a sprint triathlon for our 30th birthdays. So we bought some entry-level trek bikes and trained and did very, as expected, mediocre job on our first tries. And so I did a couple of those when I was in med school and in residency, and then I kind of let life get in the way for about 15 years until last year when COVID hit. There wasn't any gyms to go to, and it was hard to work out. I dusted off the old bike and started riding again, and started having a lot of fun, and kind of reminisced on triathlon and the challenge, and just the whole environment of racing, and that kind of brought the hunger back. And so I started getting back in the water and started dusting off my running shoes as well, and began training for a race.
And that's awesome, the fact that COVID knocked a lot of people down, and you took advantage of it and got an indoor on your bike and started running and doing all that training. So that's awesome.
Yep.
And then another thing, you did a half in Des Moines. I'm not sure when that was, but you did you qualified for St. George, and then you raced St. George.
Yeah, so, and that's an absolute brutal course. So, I came in, deciding for 21 that I wanted to have a challenge, and so I looked for a half, and with my schedule, there's so many amazing places to race, and just the way that it worked out, there was not very many options in the 2-week period that I could carve out 100% and knew that I could race. And so my wife was not too excited about Des Moines being the location, but it was their first year of hosting an Ironman branded race. And so we tackled that one, and I ended up, I think the conditions were pretty rough, but training in the heat in Las Vegas really prepared me, and got me good enough that I was able to qualify for St. George.
When was that race? When was the Des Moines race?
It was in June,
In June. And then when was the St. George race? That was
September.
September. So you went from flat to mountain.
Yeah, it was two very, very different courses.
Yeah, and that St. George day was a crazy day. So I love this. So you really have sort of two entries into triathlon. It was during med school that you did the first
Yeah,
race?
I was just finishing med school, and the wife and I decided to buy bikes and do a race or two, and it was a lot of fun. But I was busy and I didn't have a lot of time to train. And then once I started my practice, it just really fell away for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
I'm glad that you actually didn't do all that great in your first couple of races, because when I heard that you did the Las Vegas Tri and won your age group, and then did Pumpkin Man and won that, I thought you're not supposed to do this because you're brand new at this. So it's good to hear that this was your second comeback.
I'll take some
Knew a
beginners
little
luck.
bit.
Yeah.
well, and it's really neat to hear that you got involved during med school, because med school, as I think most people understand, is extremely time consuming, and unfortunately, med students can get very unhealthy during med school. So that's
For
great to
sure.
hear. So whose idea was it? Your wife's or your idea, and why triathlon?
That's a great question. I don't have a good reason for that. Maybe we just wanted to take a trip to Austin because Austin's such a fun place to visit.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't her idea. She does not enjoy the water. I'm not great in the water either, but so it stuck for me and didn't stick for her, but that's fine.
So what do you remember from that first race back in Austin then?
So I loved the environment. I just loved the transition and all the bikes and the enthusiasm and that's actually a race that's pretty much all downtown. And
a lot of energy everywhere.
It's packed. Yeah, it's packed. We're talking thousands of people, and the whole venue has fans. So you're not just out in the middle of nowhere, riding your bike. It feels like, it has a really big atmosphere, and it was a lot of fun.
So then at that point, did you know you were going to specialize in orthopedic surgery at that point, or?
Well, that was my goal. I was in the process of matching into residencies and was pushing for orthopedics. So, I actually wanted to go into sports medicine since I was 16, and didn't know the venue, whether it was going to be as a therapist or as a trainer or as a doctor. But I knew that I wanted to stay involved on the medical side of sports, and so that was just kind of the continuation of that.
Oh, I love it. So then,
one question that. Go ahead, John.
Sorry. So prior to even med school, then what was your sport background? Like high school or?
Yeah. So growing up, I was basketball morning, day, and night. I played I played soccer till I was 16 or 17. And I actually played tennis all through high school just because I tried out for the team and I was tall. Yeah. But basketball was my passion.
Wow.
That gives you a good all around power and energy and strength and endurance. It gives you everything.
It's a young man's sport, though.
It's hard on you, isn't it? and triathlon isn't?
Hey, triathlon, you can constantly compete against people your own age. So I think that's great about that.
Well, speaking of both the triathlon and your sports, your orthopedic background, I always wondered, being a surgeon and knowing what you know about shoulders, how does that translate into you swimming? Does it help knowing how to do a stroke and not tear your tendons up and
Well, I think it's helpful, but it's also frustrating because I know when things don't feel right because I've seen so many patients that have kind of taken it too far. I know when to pull back, but then it also leaves you a little bit restricted because you don't want to push it to the point of injury. And so I know for some people, things like paddles are just a non-starter because it's just too much force on the biceps and on the rotator cuff.
Yeah, but that sounds like it's a good thing. It just makes you err to the side of caution.
I certainly do that.
Well, apparently not too far, because you wouldn't be winning your races if you did. You erred too far.
All right. So now after doing the race in Austin with your wife, after that, you stepped away from the sport again, or did you keep doing races at that point?
So, I raced a tiny bit. I think I did the Captex Tri 3 times. I did the sprint twice, and then I did the Olympic the last year. And then we moved to Vail, Colorado for my sports medicine fellowship. And foolishly, 2 days after we moved to Colorado, I did a Leadville triathlon.
Oh no.
And it was a nightmare. Going from sea level to a very, very high level was a humbling experience.
Yeah. Oh, well, walk us through that because going at altitude, that's a pretty big jump and a pretty big ask.
Where
Yeah,
did you notice that first? Was it in the swim?
Yeah, I mean,
Or on a run?
it was literally 100 yards into the swim. I was out of oxygen, and there's really no way to recover from that when you have no climatization. And certainly where I was in my training, I was busy. I was not in the water. I wasn't really riding. I wasn't running. And so just to kind of do it on a whim was not the smartest thing.
Yeah, no, that was a lesson learned for sure.
Absolutely.
That's great to hear. Yeah, well, sorry, I don't mean it that way, but it's good to hear you talk about that because these experiences aren't always they don't always work, and so you have to recover
sure.
from them
And you learn from those kind of things.
Agreed.
Because I experienced the exact same thing, being out of breath in the first 100 yards when I did my first triathlon, and I wasn't at altitude. But it's like I learned, so I can imagine what that was like.
So during this period, where did you find your strength was in triathlon? The swim, bike, or run, or combination?
So I think like many of us in the club, I find that I'm pretty mediocre at all three.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started back doing more endurance sport, it was the bike where I kind of had the most fun and where I was seeing big power increases.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's still the case where I still have the most fun on the bike. The swim has been a monumental struggle, and it's a constant learning process, but I'm struggling along.
If your swim is giving you the trouble right now and you're winning, you're gonna hit plateaus or hit milestones. I mean, and you're going to actually be incredibly fast. It's like if the swim is a struggle right now and you break through those and you already have a good solid bike and you can run, I think you're gonna do well in the worlds.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things you can do for swimming to break through those plateaus.
Yeah, and I'm trying to learn those little by little, and it's tough, but it's good.
All right, so you've established that you've got a good bike run combo. So now you get back, your COVID hits and everything changes, and you get back into racing. Was this your wife's idea again, or was this you saying, "Okay, I got to do it"?
It's a COVID.
Absolutely not her idea. It's definitely a time vacuum, and it's hard kind of juggling. I got kids with busy sports schedules themselves, and my practice, and obviously with the Raiders and the Knights, it's hard to find time to train. And so, but again, I spent years in the gym lifting with all these meatheads, and I couldn't gain muscle to save my life. So I think COVID was a blessing in disguise for me to pivot and realize that maybe my strengths lay somewhere else.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
you're
it.
an endurance athlete. Yeah.
So which race did you pick as the return race? Which one was that? That wasn't 70.3, was it?
That,
Des Moines?
that
That
was
was
Des
Des
Moines.
Moines.
Oh,
that
you
was my
came.
first triathlon in 12 years.
Wow.
Oh, good grief. And you jumped into a half.
Well, I had plenty of time to train, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so now let's go to Des Moines. And so you trained as best you could given the circumstances, and you're on the start line. You'd never done a 70.3 at that point, right?
That's right.
All right.
And Des Moines was interesting in and of itself because actually, like Worlds, there was a major weather issue.
That's right.
And so,
And what was that? I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so obviously it being my first half distance race, there were a lot of nerves and uncertainties and how to approach my pace and the transitions and everything. And then we get the dreaded text at 3 a.m. that the swim had been postponed.
Hmm.
So then it kind of threw off the whole morning on where when we show up, and actually when we showed up at T1 to get set up, it was still driving rain and thunderstorms and lightning and everything. So there was a big delay to start, but they waited out long enough that we were able to, unfortunately for me, able to do the entire swim. I was hoping they would cancel it. I was hoping they would cut the swim, but instead they cut the bike, and so we didn't do a full distance bike, and then we did the full half marathon. So it was a bit of the delay obviously kind of changed routines in terms of nutrition. But the biggest thing was the pushback put everybody on the run at this hot, muggy middle of the day. It's 2 o'clock and everyone's just baking in the sun, and there was a lot of people that struggled because of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, I don't like half Ironman.
Well, at the time I was actually thinking, because we had a weird summer here in Vegas early on where that early May was really, really, really hot, and I had done quite a bit of heat training just by nature of my schedule, which my friends thought I was an idiot for running at these weird times of day. But as a result, I was pretty tolerant of the heat.
Yeah, you were acclimated.
I was able to fight through it.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so you did this race. You obviously weren't using your Trek bike from 30 years ago, but so which bike? When did you replace that bike and start on a new one?
So back to last year, I rode my old Trek for the entire summer, and then started seeing that you couldn't get a new bike because everybody was buying a bike, and it was the thing to do. And so I ordered a bike not knowing when it would arrive, and kind of snuck in a little window where I was able to get just a road bike. It's not a tri bike, but good components, and it was light. It felt night and day lighter than my old bike. And so I rode that for a long time. Then unfortunately, again, when I started thinking I would do a tri, it was just proved impossible to find a bike that fit me and had what I wanted. So I just added bars to my road bike and made that work.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Great. A lot of us got started with extensions on the road bikes. Yeah, that was my first races with extensions. And it's not that bad of a bike. I mean, especially if they're lighter. They're so much lighter than the tri bike.
It's true.
All right. So now you finished Des Moines, and when did you know that you had qualified for Worlds? Did they do it right afterwards, or was that still one of those in the email?
Yeah, unfortunately, because of two things: A, COVID, and then B, the storm. The post-race situation at Des Moines was like very muted. Like they had already kind of closed up shop. They're obviously trying to get to their next race. So there was no roll down ceremony or, anything like that. So it took a while for them to kind of figure that out and get the invites out.
All right, well, that's pretty neat that you qualified for Worlds at your first 70.3. That's exciting, and it being in St. George.
For
So
sure.
right away
Was that
you said yes.
oh, this is great, or was that an uh-oh, what'd I do?
Well, actually, the fact that it was in St. George, I was thinking, well, maybe I can really go to this one because Worlds are during the football season. So depending on where the team was going to be and what day the race was on, I had I was concerned that I would qualify and then wouldn't be able to do the race.
Right.
So talk us through what was it like doing Des Moines coming back versus when you first started doing triathlons? Was it, old hat once you got going, or was it, boy, this is entirely different?
I think that 15 years ago, I was just, I'd exercise periodically and I'd try to ride the bike occasionally, and I'd hear about a group ride at the bike shop, and, I would run after clinic or after I got home from being on call. But, this was a much more regimented training peaks,
Organized.
slow builds, try not to get injured. And because I, decided on it pretty early, and I had a long time to train, I was able to ramp up my fitness pretty slow.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, that's neat to hear that, coming back and yeah, as a more mature athlete, I guess we'll put it that way.
Old, yeah.
Yeah. You approach it with a little bit more science behind it and a little bit more method behind it.
One thing I'm real interested in is what it was like for you to do the St. George course with that climb and then get off and run. And it's like,
well, I did do a little bit of recon. So a month before, in August, on the way home from a trip up to the mountains, I stopped and ran the loop one time. I didn't do the half, but I did the 6.5 miles loop.
Okay.
So I did know coming in how painful that run was going to be. And I also knew how much of a soul crusher the second loop was going to be. Because when you do that hill and then you get to the finish line and you have to do it again, you get in this kind of mind warp it's tough.
But what about after the bike though? That's what I was more concerned about.
Well, I was actually mad because of the bike, because when I was at the base of Snow Canyon, I got a flat tire, and I as I said, I'm really slow in the water, and I had been picking off my age group, like consistently throughout the bike. I was feeling strong. I had a rabbit in front of me. I had this girl who was, we were in the last men's group, and then there was, women's group started after us, and so the strongest women age groupers were kind of intermingled with us. And I had a good rabbit that I was, draft legal, whatever, following, just picking people off. And then I got a flat at the base of Snow Canyon, and that cost me a lot of time, and it made me pretty frustrated, but things that I couldn't control.
Yeah, that's tough when you get a flat, but that's neat to recover and then have a good race. So with St. George, those locals watching this know that there was a big storm that hit. So I think the question really becomes, where were you when the storm hit?
So unfortunately, I was on, I think, is it State Highway 6 coming out? It's the climb coming out of Sand Hollow. And so it's half of the highway's blocked off and half of it is the cars. And nobody was in Arrow. The wind was, it was hurricane force winds, and everyone was just trying not to fall over. It was, it felt like hail. I think it was hail at some point. And it was pretty horrible for about 15 or 20 minutes.
It was bad. All right, but now what's the deal? This is Des Moines, and now St. George. So are you bringing this type of weather to the races? Is that what's going on?
Well, I'm 2 for 2, but the sprints were both great weather.
There you go.
And you had like suffered and just got stronger, and those races beating you up because
I guess so.
You kicked butt at Las Vegas and Pumpkin Man.
Thank you.
So then you ultimately finished St. George, and how did that feel when you're coming down that finish line chute?
I mean, yeah, after obviously the second loop, and trying to push myself and hold on and not cramp, and with that much elevation on a only a half distance, it was awesome feeling, and kind of culmination of several months of putting the work in, and real fun experience for sure.
That's great.
So,
And yeah, I mean, your schedule is not like a lot of people where you have a lot of off-hour type of work you need to do. So that's pretty neat that you're able to string together some good training to do well in that race. And you did well regardless of the flat tire.
Yeah, I think the worst part for me was having to go straight from the finish line to the airport to fly to Pittsburgh for the Raiders game.
Oh,
oh my goodness.
So,
And get up in an airplane with your legs feeling like that.
yeah, so
And you're not a small guy, so it's like cramping you in behind the seat.
So doing a red eye on a low quality airline, which was the only one that had the flight, was less than ideal.
Yeah, and flying out of St. George, it's not like that's a major airport. So
For
that
sure.
that jumps to one of the questions I was going to ask you. Do any of the Raider players or even the night players know that you do triathlon? And in that case, did they know that you just did a world championship race?
I don't know if they know that I did the worlds. During COVID, when the clinics were slower and my surgery schedule was off, that year we had to test every single day. So I probably had 400 COVID tests. But I would incorporate the Raiders facility on my rides, and so a lot of football players saw my bike and the new bike, and they loved the bike. And then Alec Martinez for the nights, he's a big cyclist, and so we talk a lot about a triathlon.
Oh, that's good. That's good. There's a connection there. All right. So now what does 2022 look like? What do you got your sights on?
Well, I'm sticking with half distance.
Mhm.
I'm signed up for Oceanside,
Okay.
and I'm signed up for Salem.
Oh, nice.
Oh, good.
Okay.
The river
So
swim.
I figure a downriver swim would do me good.
That's strategic. I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
And just for your information, BBSC posted their local schedule for
Oh,
the
perfect.
Lake Mead races. That's up. So you can do Rage and Sand Hollow and do that course, part of that course again.
That's right. Hopefully in better weather.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's great. Yeah, Oceanside will be fun, and yeah, there's a number of locals going up to the
Salem.
Oregon 70.3. That'll be neat.
Yeah, it's I mean, everyone that's been said it's a really fun race.
Yeah. Chad, this has been great talking with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and it's so neat to hear a story, where you started off years ago and then you took a break. I would call that your 15-year taper, I guess. That's how I always look at it. And then you
I
came
was
back and
well rested. That's
yeah,
right.
that's right.
And smarter and come back training well.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's great, and it's great to see you having success, and I'm looking forward to what 2022 brings. So thanks so much for doing this. Great to hear your story.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's fun.
Yep. And then thank you again for my shoulder. Appreciate that too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, have a good night.
All right. Thanks.
Later.